He said, Maria Callas and Tebaldi would show up a half an hour before. At 2 o'clock, you're late. And who are you? You're nobody.
He came on stage in a sequin dress and a disco ball on his head.
And she said, you are going to be famous. You are going to be rich. You are going to be famous.
Everybody just started to sight read this divine music. And I was, well, this is something. This is something.
All at once, I see my parents. My father grabbed my mother and twirled her around.
I get up early. I've come to really love the morning because ideas flow in a kind of a fresh and easy way for me. Trying to find a new idea at 4 in the afternoon, I think for anybody is a nightmare. I'm a stage director, but I'm also a conductor. I'm a pianist. I'm a vocal coach. I still perform at the piano with singers. I have to keep my chops up. When I first arrived at Opera McGill, everything was done by paper. The 5th floor board, I think a lot of the older students will remember that. It became very obvious that the students were looking at Facebook, they were looking at social media, they were on their phones. And the way to communicate with them was purely electronic. Patrick's opera blog is something I started back about 6 or 7 years ago. It developed into a way of communicating ideas with current students and maybe prospective students. The Della Pergolas were a husband and wife team, and I'm sure it was very different when they first got here and basically made opera out of nothing.
They were singing all over the world, and then they were hardly ever together. And they decided to give their culture and their knowledge to students and to teach.
And Mr. Della Pergola, he had sung with Maria Callas. I mean, I didn't know anybody in Laval who had sung with Maria Callas.
We were in a little tiny building, I think it was an old brownstone on McTavish where the now defunct bookstore was located. And we had 3 hours on Wednesday night, for which I was paid $3 an hour, and 3 hours on Saturday. That was our rehearsal schedule.
Everything was done by the two of them.
He would bring a score. It would be so beautifully marked, the cuts would be there. Any cadenzas that were written in were perfectly written. It was fabulous.
They did the diction, they did the moving. My father did the blocking.
Page 14, System 4, Measure 4. With hands in the pocket, Hensel crosses at his left. Very traditional, no shooting heroin like a Peter Sellers thing.
Training for opera singers has changed. They, of course, still are working on their voice, they're still working on their technique, they're working on their languages. We try to focus also on acting and body movement. That's one of the things that Tai Chi kind of lends itself to. But that started about 10 years ago. And I saw such a change in the singers. I also do a class once a week, meditation for musicians.
There was usually one main production, and then there was at least 4 different productions of excerpts.
Mrs. Della Pergola never stopped learning. She always was doing something, studying in her 80s, swimming every day. She was a great model for how to live your life passionately. And she always made sure you knew how special you were to her.
That's Traviata, that's from the film, Marquervieux, that's Holland. The Della Pergolas taught me about being professional, being elegant. They came from a European culture, where they were respectful of people and colleagues and what they were doing.
I had never done an opera before, ever in my life. 19 years old, no YouTube, no Google, no nothing. And they trusted us at 20, 21. Something that was, pretty bold, I have to say. We didn't even know if we could do it. When I think about that, I just get very touched, because they were famous people, they were great artists, and they gave us the possibility to think that it was possible.
Salut, hello, how are you?
Design meetings are my favorite meetings here at McGill. And I was really lucky that I was introduced to Vincent Lefebvre. And at the end of the season, it will be almost 60 operas that we have designed together. His wife, Jeanette Renier, is our costume designer. She is a genius. Whenever I doubt myself artistically, they're sort of the first people I talk to. If we didn't have Serge, I don't know how things might happen. He is officially our lighting designer, but he's basically the technical designer, the production designer, the production stage manager. So this team grew a few years ago to include this brilliant makeup artist, Florence Cornet. She creates these amazing displays on people's faces. It's a team effort.
That's good.
I like that.
But this is how it all started. You see, look how the drawings were. That's how I did them, and from that they made sense. They were always laughing. The class was always a very jovial and happy class.
Mr. Della Pergola was turning pages for me, and he thought he'd be funny, and he turned the pages way, way too fast for me. At the end of the concert, Madame came over to me, and she said, "What were you doing? Why were you going so fast? Why were you?" I said, "I was playing by heart." I said, "Because your husband was fooling around," and he was always a jokester. A wonderful raconteur, wonderful storyteller, very charismatic person. They both were.
We do a Fledermaus, for instance, that was a celebration that we had after 30 years. And then comes a beautiful Viennese waltz. And all at once, I see my parents. My father grabbed my mother and twirled her around in the dance with everybody, and he just went around and around and around and out. I was so shocked. I didn't know anything about it. I found that to be one of the most beautiful moments for me as a daughter, and I think for the audience, because of course everybody recognized them.
I left for the end the main female character, Mimi, a young Italian girl, Gianna Corbiziero, gifted with a beautiful sound and a developed sense of phrasing. Time is the greatest teacher in theater, and if she perseveres seriously, she will succeed in her career. Of course, if she is also helped by little luck. It was their last full opera, and they were retiring after 35 years. It was a big production, and his health was also failing, so we knew it was sort of, okay, this was it, let's enjoy it.
Sounds super cool.
Yeah, I know, hello.
So I want to go.
Opera McGill office assistants are integral to my survival and to the success, actually, of Opera McGill. They communicate with the students, they bring in our guests, they deal with their housing and their flights. I bring in directors who direct very differently from me. I bring in conductors who have different musical approaches than I do. You're going to learn about opera just from me? I don't think so.
I was chosen to be part of the big celebration with the Pope when he came to Montreal at the stadium, and she saw me on television. She said, "Dominique, I saw you with the Pope yesterday. You are going to be famous. You are going to be rich. You are going to be famous."
There were many students that still kept in touch with my mother, and some of them are teaching at McGill right now, and some are singing still, and there's many beautiful memories.
We've had a great tradition of coaches at McGill. There was Maestro Narducci, who had come from La Scala. Barry Weisenfeld, he was the principal coach at the time when I was there, and I would sit by his side and turn pages. There were Marie-Thérèse Paquin, who wrote books on opera. There was Monique Grenier, there was Mado Rock, and it has continued with Dixie Ross Neal, with Patrick Henson, with Stephen Hargraves.
We had a wonderful group of people who were almost like a repertory company who helped the Della Pergolas and the school establish themselves as a place to go and hear opera. There was no place in the city.
I think Vici d'arte and Vici d'amore is the aria that represents them. They lived for art, they lived for love.
There were, after them, 3 other very important heads of opera. There was the time of Bernard Turgeon, and then, of course, Dixie Ross Neal. and now Patrick Hansen. Bernard, of course, brought with him many, many, many years of professional experience. He was the first Louis Riel, and he continued singing this in many places. And he instituted more classes for the opera program. It was now time for not only the opera studio to be for the entire population of Montreal, but primarily for our students. Previously, because of lack of resources, there were taxi drivers who sang, there were psychiatrists who were magnificent singers, neurologists, many people from the community.
When you worked with Bill and Dixie, you worked with people who had directly worked with all the greats. So when they spoke about tradition, they spoke with the gravity of people who had helped prepare or who had themselves perform on these major stages.
Nothing was more important to Dixie than her students, and I think it came from her own childhood. When she started high school, there was a local patron of the arts, and she actually paid for Dixie's lessons. She felt really obligated and had the desire to help other students in the same way.
Bill was somebody who really looked at the score and got the singer to be themselves the composer's advocate. Dixie could sit down and play any of these scores and say, so-and-so did it this way, so-and-so did it that way, and, maybe with a funny little catty story about each of these people. It was really a wonderful way of learning.
So here we are in La Salle Wilfrid Pelletier on the set of Aida, the grandest of grand Verdi operas. I just began as the general director of l'Opéra de Montréal, and that was after 6 years of being CEO of Pacific Opera Victoria, where I was working with the artistic director, Timothy Vernon, who was the head of the orchestra and an instructor at McGill. During my years, it was amazing the impact that he had on students.
Hold there, right there, Augie.
Part of the excitement of the last couple of years has been all the webcasts we've been doing in high definition. We have this amazing person named George Massenberg. He's really taken this notion of just sort of broadcasting an opera and turned it into multi-camera, live editing. We have Grammy Award-winning sound engineers who are miking the students for these webcasts.
This is the dress rehearsal of Les Feuillettes tonight. That might be shocking to some people, but I never actually graduated from McGill. They put on a production of Elisa d'Amore, and they had 2 casts, so I ended up being in the second cast of Belcore.
Whole experience was so formative. It was really even back at McGill that I started to form this idea that, you wouldn't necessarily have to be a singer to have a life in this art form.
I had amazing coaches. I did the song interpretation with Jan Simons and Michael McMahon. I had a phenomenal voice teacher too. I was with Winston Purdy then. It's one of the best schools. I would say country-wide, but maybe even continent-wide.
Shall we sing it all along together?
I was actually one of the people who recruited Patrick to Opera McGill. He knew how the industry worked, but he also knew how Young Voices worked. He knows the repertoire inside and out, and he has an encyclopedic vision of the art form.
It was his first meeting, right? It was his first meeting at Opera McGill. I was the first class. Nobody knew who he was. He was from America.
He had so much knowledge that he could really help us with preparing for auditions, preparing the right repertoire.
I call myself a disciple of Patrick's because I followed him. He did his summer program at Brevard, and I went there for 3 summers.
I was going back for my master's, and I got the chance to sing a production, Suor Angelica, and Patrick Hansen is fantastic. What a great director, and his wife Elizabeth Koch, fantastic.
While he has been here, we've had 2 hugely successful baritones, bass baritones, Philippe Sly and Gordon Bintner.
We had an amazing faculty that is McGill at our disposal to create these professional quality productions. It wasn't such a big step then, taking the step out of McGill into the professional world. It's prepared me for everything I've done, truly.
Our dean at the time, Don McLean, said he wanted to see McGill graduates back on the stages of the COC and Vancouver Opera and l'Opera de Montréal and in those young artist programs. And so that's what we did. Opera McGill is one of the largest opera programs here in Canada. We do more opera with orchestra than any other opera program does. So we do a Baroque opera every year. We do it with period tuning and we do it with period instrumentation. And you can really only find that, at Yale.
Good, not bad at all.
And soon I'm sure I'll sleep, John.
I'm trying.
They're very high value productions. We get a full orchestra with top quality conductors. I'm currently a student at Opera McGill. I've been here for 2 years and I feel that the opportunities created here will help me launch my career.
Jordan D'Souza, who's now conducting all over the world, was my assistant conductor, and I basically said, oh, here's how you conduct accompanied recit. And like 5 minutes later, he was a master at this. So working with that level of student artists and the colleagues, it was like a professional opera company within a major research university.
They called me the morning of closing night of COSI, and they said, I think you should go on tonight and conduct something. And I thought, this is great. My time at McGill meant so much to me.
Through my experience at Opera McGill, I sort of had enough rudimentary knowledge to start my own company, Opera 5. I am actually the first stage directing Adler fellow, and I feel like that probably is a testament to Opera McGill's training.
The opera world right now, there's so much that's going on experimentally, and I think that McGill doesn't shy away from that. We were doing a 60s version of Così fan tutte. It was a bit racy. I had a hot pink bra that at some point during one of my arias I had to change my costume and stand there and then get dressed again. That was a first.
There was a production of Agrippina. I came on as a servant boy type thing. I did strip down to my underwear and all that. I was probably doing push-ups off stage before to prepare for that.
In Agrippina, Dave Tenervia, I thought to myself, during this dream sequence, what could we add to this? And I said to Jeanette, maybe, you could think of something like a disco ball on his head and maybe, a sequin dress. And the next thing I knew, at the dress rehearsal, there he was. Serge lit the disco ball up. There was light everywhere in the room. I got very emotional actually because I thought, where else can you get this? So it was a very fulfilling moment.
We were doing a production of Imeneo. There was this big plastic container on stage. It went poof, and the whole water just splashed down on the floor and started rushing towards the pit. I ran down the steps in front of the water, jumped and lay down. And the next thing I knew, Patrick was beside me, also lying down, and we sort of created like human sandbags.
Patrick put me on stage in one production of Agrippina. I came out in a kind of cocktail outfit and played. It was as if she was a pop star, Papin. I played the aria as her hired help in their penthouse suite.
Opera McGill taught me to be professional, to put your best foot forward, and to never say no.
I did my first Don at McGill, and now I have the great opportunity to sing Don Giovanni at Opera de Montréal. And so coming back to the score, coming back to this incredible piece, I have so much that was ingrained in my mind from the fond memories of creating it for the first time at McGill.
I go to the performances because every time I go, I'm amazed at what started in a tiny little building on McTavish is now this wonderful organization.
I will not miss one Opera McGill production, and I always tell everybody, don't miss operas. They're big deals. You don't miss your mother's birthday, you don't miss the opera.
Here at Opera McGill, it typically takes about 100 hours to stage an opera. They can be here till 10 o'clock at night, and then they've got an 8:30 in the morning classroom. The production is not the point. And for so many other programs, it's the production that's the point. This is all student-focused, it's student-based. I pick the shows based on the students I have and the students I think will be coming. When we create opera, it's in a process that allows them to explore. It's a process that allows them to fail. We can go from high Baroque Tizé to updated Rodelinda, to a real Roman kind of Rape of Lucretia with a good twist, to this very Tai Chi Alcina that we're doing, to a 60s Così fan tutte, to a period La Bohème with full chorus and 100 people on stage, plus a dog. we can really offer the students a wide variety of experiences and our audiences as well. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why Opera McGill is what it is. Okay, that was good. That was long.
Yeah, so I'll send it to you.
The love we all develop for the art form through Opera McGill is something that always guides us.
When you're young, you don't know all this, and then you grow older and you realize, you're like, wow, I was really lucky. It's a good school.
And how would they feel now? Well, I was at the Bohème production, and I feel that they, from up there, would have said how proud they are.
Siamo all'ultima